Hello and welcome back to the 12 Days of Christmas Watercolor Challenge. Today we are working on day 4 of the challenge, where we will paint this beautiful red vintage shiny truck, which is kind of what you always see at the holidays, is this really fun old style truck and carrying the Christmas tree. So I thought this would be such a cute piece to frame either in your home or to send it as a holiday card. If you are just joining in the challenge, you can scroll down in the description of this video. I'll have a link to the rest of the tutorials we've already painted, so you can go ahead and catch up there. And just a reminder that if you are going to submit all of your paintings from the challenge to have a chance to win the grand prize, which is a free entry into my Master Watercolor Dog Breeds course, you can do that, and just make sure that you are tagging me at Windswept Design Studio over on Instagram when you post a picture of each of your paintings. I'll have directions on how to do that if you scroll on down. Also, we'll have the free printable outline workbook down below. So just head on down to the description. You'll find out all the information right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with my larger size 10 pointed round brush. Anything that's a medium to, smaller size brush will be perfect for this. And then I'm going to start working on the truck. So this truck is this nice candy red color. I have an alizarin crimson red color in my palette. So any type of red that you have, as long as it looks like a pretty true red, will be perfect. Now I do want to add like a little variety to this red. So here's my red straight as it is from the tube. Now to make it a little bit like brighter, like even more candy apple red, I'm just going to add a little bit of my cadmium. Well, it's kind of like an orange color, but it's this cadmium free red color from Winsor & Newton. And so if I combine those two with the alizarin crimson, then I'm going to get a more of a brighter, orangier red. Okay, so that's kind of the red color. That's going to be what I'll use, but I'll use some other, variety of reds, including mixing the Payne's Gray in to get kind of a darker, shadowy color. All right, so I have my brush pretty loaded with paint. Not too much water, just enough so I know that it's going to glide along the paper. And I'm going to work on areas that are going to be kind of the darker areas, and we're going to work in sections. So this outline has it already kind of sectioned out for me based on like just the different grooves and the different, pieces of the car. So I'm just going to start right here, kind of where the door is. And that's the section I'm going to start with. And I'm going to paint in what feels like some of the darker parts of the red truck. All right, so I'm just going to take my paint, run it kind of down and around, kind of like on the outer edge, and come back up. And when we do this truck, it's going to be kind of like it's going to have some curves to it. So we want to make sure that we show these highlights and shadows. All right, so I really just was outlining right there. And then as I work my way into the inner part of this door, I'm hoping to see a little less paint as I work my way up. And instead of picking up more paint, what I'm going to do is just pick up some water, kind of dab my paper towel so it's not going to pool too much. And that's going to give me even a lighter value of that red. And again, I'll get rid of some more of that. This part right here should be pretty light. We can even show just some highlights by leaving the white of the paper. Okay, again, I'm going to get rid of some of that paint on my brush. This is just a really great way to control how much paint you have on your brush, is by picking up some water and then also dabbing your paper towel. All right, working my way up. Again, this is nice and bright. I might even leave some of the white of the paper up top here. I know there's a little handle for the car door. I'll probably paint that just a different color. And we're going to work our way up and around the top of the car. And again, I have not picked up any more paint yet. All right. So there's a section of the car, and you can kind of see with the different values of those reds, how it's starting to look a little more dimensional. So I'll just pick up a little bit more of that red, and I want to just run it right along the top. So using a very thin pressure, I'll just kind of outline the top there. And maybe if you feel like anything else got too light, it's always a good time to go back through and grab more of that red, and while it's wet, just drop it in right along the edge. That wet on wet technique is really nice because then it's just going to naturally kind of blend and fade together. Okay. And I might just run one little darker area right around kind of where the window is, because the car kind of comes up and into the window. All right. Looks good. Just run a little bit right there. And I'm still gonna leave this part nice and bright. If you ever feel like you added too much paint, my lifting technique of just getting rid of all the paint and dabbing your paper towel so you really have a pretty like dry, clean brush, you can go back through and lift, just kind of scoop up some of that wet paint. It'll just help dry up a little bit of it if you need. Okay, let's continue down the truck. I'm gonna work on this top of the wheel area. So again, I'll just take my alizarin crimson and I'm going to mix a little bit of that cadmium red, which is really that orange, just to brighten it up a little bit. So similar to what we did, we started with quite a bit of paint and worked our way down around the bottom half of this metal part of the truck. And feel free to rotate your painting if you need to not touch this wet area. All right, so coming back down and around. And like that. So we just want to make sure that we're going to see a little bit of a difference between this section and what we just painted. So we can do that by simply just altering this color or making it a little bit different than what this one was. So I'm just going to add a little bit more orange into my red. And that's the color I'll try to bring up. And depending on if this area is still wet, you might just want to be really careful and not like bump into that other little wet area that we already did. Okay, so maybe you can kind of see there's just a little difference of the red tones there. Now this upper area again is going to be light and bright, kind of like we did up here. So I'll just get rid of a lot of the paint on my brush. And I just left a little section right here to help kind of divide and show a little shine. But again, you're just going to pick up water, dab your paper towel so you don't have too much of it. This is where we're just going to lay in some highlighted areas, just with a little bit of paint. All right. So again, you can leave whites of the paper. It's going to help with the shine. All right, looks good. And then once these areas dry, we can go back through and add another layer if we need to really deepen some of those shadows. All right, I'm gonna work my way on the top of the hood. I'm gonna grab some of our red color. And then what I'm going to do is do actually the top area and make that nice and dark. Right along there, just kind of like that. And then this area is nice and bright. So I'll get rid of the paint on my brush for the most part, quite a bit of it. And then we're just going to smooth that color in there. Now there is like a little bit of a, the the mirror is right there for the vintage truck. So we'll try and paint that in a different color. If you lose it, don't worry. It's a very small mirror compared to the mirrors that we're used to on our cars. So I'm using very little paint. And again, just using mostly water and pushing that paint around. All right, those sections are starting to come together. Let's do this area. And grabbing more of our red here. The area back here in the bed of the side bed of the truck is going to be even darker than, just because it's pushed back farther. So I have quite a bit of paint on my brush. I'm going to leave this little section right here that divides the bed of the truck with the main cab. I'm just going to leave it white for now. It's going to be a super dark color just because it's really shadowed in there. All right, so I'll just work on this little section. Again, outlining it, coming up. I'm gonna grab a little more paint and come on down and around, over, back up. So there won't be a lot of reflections in this piece again because it is just set so far back. All right, so now what I can do is just start to fill that in. And you'll see what I'm going to do actually is grab some of our Payne's Gray and we're gonna just darken some of the shadowed areas. So let's just fill all that in. Kind of like one big flat color. All right, so now, if you hear all that background noise, that is my dog. He's not so little actually, but he's hanging out with me while I paint today. Okay, so now that we have that section together, I'm gonna grab a little bit of the Payne's Gray here, and then I'm gonna mix it with our red color. Now, I don't want it like crazy dark here. But what I'm gonna do is take that dark color and just drop it right along the top edge there. And maybe kind of around this hub of the wheel here. So as you can kind of see, it's creating that shadow area towards kind of like those parts that are really set back. And we'll probably add some of that same darker color kind of like underneath this part too. So we'll just do that once we get through this part of the truck. Okay, so next let's do this back part above the wheel. And very similar to what we did up front here, we're going to grab our red, but we do want to add a little bit of that orange into that color. Just add a little more just to make it a little bit of a brighter red. Okay, so I have quite a bit of paint on my brush and we are going to kind of start to outline like we always have been doing, especially down and around the bottom where it's the darkest. Just gonna grab a little bit more. Kind of come up and back down. So again, I do want it to be brighter, so I'm just gonna grab more of the orange. We're just going to bring that up, but now being careful, this area, I do want to keep it nice, light and bright like we did up here. So as you can see, kind of like you can kind of compare now, wet watercolor when it's wet on the paper appears much darker than it actually dries. So here it is dried up top here. So just something to kind of keep note on. So now I just picked up water and dabbed my paper towel. I'm just going to continue that process to bring it up and keep it nice, light, and bright. All right, just gonna get rid of some more. And I'm going to leave a little bit of the white of the paper showing to make it look extra shiny. All right. This little section here too, we'll just grab some of our red and going to just quick fill that in as well. It's just like a little piece that just kind of set back there. All right. Like that. So now let's let all of that area of the car dry, and let's come on down to the wheels. So the wheels, I just want to make sure that I have a little bit of a red ring in them. So there's that white and red and then the black tire. All right, so this ring or circle right here from our outline is going to represent the silver inner hubcap. So we are going to work on just kind of working on a little bit of a border around it with that red. So again, rotate your paper if that's easier for you. I know creating circles is very hard for me. It's definitely not an easy shape. You could use a smaller brush if you need to, just to make sure that it looks nice and round. Something like that. And again, don't worry if you don't get it perfect. Sometimes the more I play with it, the worse I make it. So I should just stop right there. All right, do the same thing on the other one. Try to match the best we can. And if you feel like you have better control, just grab a smaller brush. Sometimes too long of a point, like this brush is kind of borderline for me for control. So I'm just gonna rotate paper. All right. Like that. Just so they look relatively symmetrical. All right. So again, I think I'm gonna switch to just a little bit of a smaller size 6 brush. I'm gonna grab some of our ivory black color. So just the black in your palette. And I don't want a ton of water because I do want it to be a nice dark color. All right. So I'll start up here just because that hubcap area is dry. So again, we are going to make sure that we kind of do our best to make a circle. And I'm gonna leave just this little bit of white between what I'm creating as the tire line, and then that's actually gonna be darker just because it's shadowed. But I just want the tire to be a little bit lighter than the rest. All right. I'm painting this on a nice, well, I don't know how nice it appears. It looks pretty from the outside, but I'm painting this on a snowy day, so that's kind of fun. Gets me more in the holiday spirit, at least. Okay, so there's just that black piece, and we're gonna do it on this one as well. Hopefully this part should be dry by now. So I'm just kind of doing a nice thin little line on the tire. Feel free to rotate your paper. All right. And then the tires are sitting in snow. Let's see how that looks. Looks anything else? All right. I will stop there. Otherwise, like I said, if I play with it too much, I just tend to ruin it. Okay, so there is a nice dark area right underneath, like kind of the little foot part that you step on to get into the truck. So I'll just pick up more of our black color. I have quite a bit. I'm just going to run it right along the bottom there. And then I'm also just going to run it along. I'm going to leave the in-between part, as of right now, white of the paper. Let's see. Do our best to do that. Okay. Just kind of make that as straight as I possibly can. Okay, so now we have that white strip down the middle, and what I'm just going to do is grab a little bit of water so I don't have quite as much on my brush, and just pull it along the center. Just so it helps to kind of break up that dark color. All right. Looking great so far. Let's go ahead and work on the handle, which again, that really is like a metal handle. So I think I'm just going to use the black again as like a little bit of a under shadow accent. It's going to be something just so subtle, and I want to keep it nice and bright. So I really just use the tip of my brush just to kind of do a little black outline there. And I'm going to continue with this black. And if you need to, switch out to your fine liner brush, but this is what I'll use to help outline like where the door is. So just with a really, I'm just gonna get less paint. So really thin pressure, just make that little bit of an outline there. You can bring that up. So we just did that little line there. There's this line you hopefully can kind of see from the outline here. And then it kind of comes up and around. That's where the hood of the car is. Just kind of follow it all the way to the edge. And let's see, there's another little line that comes and divides this door. So again, thin pressure. Bring that piece down. And up above the window area. Again, this is to help outline the door. Okay. And let's see. This is the color I'll use to make that really dark patch that divides the bed of the truck for the cab here. And let's see, I think that's looking good. The this dark black color. Now, depending on how much black you had on your tires, you might need to add, what I like to do to deepen it even more is just grabbing Payne's Gray, and you can mix that with that black. You could also mix brown with it to make it even richer. I just need something that's going to be a darker color than the grayish black color we were already using. And this is what I'll paint in between, kind of like right here, because that part is really nice and dark, and I'll show you how that looks like it's kind of set back there. All right, and then up here. And down towards that hubcap there. All right. Perfect. So now let's work on the tree, and then we can do the window and then the snow around the car. Okay, so for the tree, and you definitely can continue on with this size 6, or you could move to a little bit larger, but I want to start with my size 6. So now I'm definitely going to need my sap green color, so any type of green in your palette. and I'm going to mix it with a variety of colors. So I'm just gonna find a spot on my palette here, and then I'm gonna grab some of the Payne's Gray to darken some of those areas, and then you'll even want to use a little bit of your brown. So I have that burnt umber color, and I'll mix some of that in there with my greens as well, just to get a little bit of a variety of color. The green, that sap green right out of the tube, is not quite the right evergreen color, so mixing it with the brown and the Payne's Gray is definitely going to be a help. Okay, just going to grab a little bit more. You could even mix it with a blue in your palette, since sometimes the evergreens can be, or Christmas trees can be, more of that bluish green color. Okay. So you got enough on your palette. Let's just start. And we're just gonna have fun with painting fun little like lines to show texture of our tree, like that. The key will be to grab different greens throughout the tree. I'm just doing little like curved flick motions with very little pressure of my brush as I work my way down. That's gonna give us that needle-like effect. And sometimes like I won't even pick up more paint, and it's just going to get a little bit less in areas like that. And then of course, where the tree is touching the truck, that's where it'll be darker, just because the shadow. All right, just gonna continue down. Going to come here, and again, you can just kind of start to incorporate some other colors into this tree. Grabbing just green, mixing it with brown. Grabbing more water just to lighten your paint. Just something to kind of differentiate different sections. Okay. Grabbing more green. Coming back down. We can always add darker green into the tree too, so it's easier to go lighter, or better to go lighter, and then you can add in more. All right. I'm going to drop in a little bit of the Payne's Gray with my green towards where the truck is, this tree. And this will be kind of like the bottom part right here. Maybe I'll use a little bit more of that darker color just to add it into a few other branches like that. Right. So something kind of loose and fun like that, I think looks great. You could go through and add a little bit of brown in the center to show part of the trunk. So if you have a little bit of white showing, you can just run that right down in some of those areas. Don't want to overdo that. Okay, so let's finish this winter scene by adding in our snow, especially along, the bottom. I'm already adding some water there. That'll be just fine. And I'm gonna work with, I have the French Ultramarine Blue in my palette. I'll definitely be using some of the Payne's Gray just to help kind of keep it a little more neutral of a blue, kind of grayish blue. So mixing those two colors kind of gives me that nice misty icy color. All right, so I'll just take the tip of my brush. Doesn't matter really what size, just as long as you have a little bit of a point. You can grab a lot of water, mostly water, just a little bit of paint. We're just going to start, and we're gonna leave little bits of white of the paper in between. If you help or were already painting along with this challenge and painted along with the penguin, it's going to be kind of similar to how we created the ice. So just trying to leave little whites of the paper showing through. Just going to start to gradually fade it as I work my way down. So I just want it to be a little bit darker right where that area is, where the truck is sitting on there. So now you certainly could add a background or just leave it as is. It's always a hard decision to decide what to do. I want to just leave it with a white background, or we could add kind of a snowy scene. So I have another type of blue in my palette, which is this Windsor blue, but it's just a nice bright blue. I'll definitely use that within the sky, and I'll probably even drop some of that, if you have another blue, just to kind of drop it into the snow that we were just painting with, and while it's still wet. Okay, I'm going to take that brighter sky blue and I'm going to work at the top. So I have my larger brush. I'm going to use mostly water. I'm going to leave a little bit of the white of the paper around the edge, just kind of doing a nice little faded scene of our background. Pick up more water. I don't want it like super duper dark. Okay, you can kind of pick up other blues as you work your way down. Mostly water, a little bit of paint. All right, I'm gonna grab a little more. And before this dries, I just don't want to leave any weird streaks. All right, I'll come in. Just gonna move this a little bit. I like where I have that dark, kind of that darker outer edge. You can drop some of that in. Coming back down. Leaving it lighter around the truck. All right. I really like how that background turned out. When it comes to doing the window, I know we haven't done anything with the window yet. That is something that I like to do, kind of reflecting the sky. So we'll grab some of that same color, but I'm not going to do a ton of it. So I'm just going to kind of do some lines. It's just going to help kind of reflect some of that sky in there. Like that. And we also need to do the center part of the hubcaps, I'm noticing. So we'll go back and do that. I first just want to finish some of the snowy areas. This is always really fun to take your Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed-Proof White. I'm going to use my size 6 brush and grabbing some of that. This is always fun to do where you can just kind of dab it. And sometimes if you have like your paper towel, you can use that to kind of sponge it just to create a nice little texture. The more you use, the starker the white against the blue it'll be. So kind of being a little bit messy with it. It just adds kind of that realistic snow texture towards the front, the forefront. So yeah, just kind of dabbing it along. Like that. All right. You certainly could use this as snowflakes in the background if you would like to do that. Just do little snowflake dots. You can kind of see they're super subtle back there. I'm just going to add a few of those. And some will pop a little bit more than others. Kind of try and make them, you know, some bigger, some smaller, and some closer to each other so they're not too uniform. All right, coming down. Definitely do not need to be perfect little dots. Great. Okay, so let's finish up our truck. Just gonna get rid of all that white on my brush. And I also see that I need to finish up the little mirror. So I'm going to use just a little bit. We're gonna do the hubcap. So, or the, what would that be? Yeah, is that a hubcap? You can tell I'm not super well knowledgeable about the cars, but I'm gonna use just a little bit of our black, mostly water, just a little bit of paint. And that is what's going to be that metal. So I'm just going to paint kind of a little darker edge along the bottom. We'll do that on the other one. We can't get super detailed just because it's so small. All right. And for the mirror, I'll just grab a little bit more of that black, a little bit darker. Again, feel free to switch to a smaller brush if you need to. Similar to what we did with our handle, I'm just going to outline it a little bit. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what it is because it's so small. All right. There we have our vintage red truck for day 4 of our challenge. And again, if you are looking to submit your paintings to win a free entry into my Master Watercolor Dog Breeds course, which is a $200 value and such a well-loved course if you love painting dogs, you can go ahead and post a picture of each of your paintings on Instagram and tag me at Windswept Design Studio. Or if you don't have Instagram, that is okay. Just send me an email. All the information will be down below if you are subscribed and signed up for the challenge. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here, and I will see you tomorrow for day 5.